good morning, and welcome to First Unitarian. Please rise and body our spirit and join me in singing, "Oh, we give thanks." Oh, we give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for this time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for this time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Susie Farrell, and I use she, her pronouns. Here at First Unitarian, our mission is through spiritual connection and community. We listen deeply to others and ourselves, open to wonder and transformation, and serve together with love and humility. We acknowledge with respect the Seneca Nation, keepers of the Western Door and part of the Haudenosaunee people, on whose ancestral lands First Unitarian now stands. If you're new or newish here, please stop in at the welcome desk so we can help you connect. And if you're here today because you're going through a hard time or worried about someone else, please connect with the pastoral care person during or after our service. If you're a regular around here, you might be surprised to see me because you were expecting our lead minister, Reverend Sherry. They're sick today, but fortunately, church is always the work of many hands and voices. And so today, I'm joined with Jenna Cohen, our worship associate, and a special guest preacher, Rev.Eileen Casey-Campbell. Good team. And now, will you please join me in our unison words as Jenna lights our chalice. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and mysteries of this great gift.
One more time in body or spirit, we're going to sing "How Could Anyone?" and we'll help you out with the lyrics from up here. Rise in body or spirit, let's sing "How Could Anyone?" How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your longing is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. Let's
Hello. My name is Jenna Cohen, and I use she and her pronouns. And early this morning, as I was driving here, thinking about a story I wanted to share with you, I thought back to a time when I was helping to plan a worship service for a young adult con that I was hosting at my home church in Binghamton, which is where I'm from. And I had volunteered to do several things, maybe too many. And one of the things I was helping with was the worship service. And so I was very excited to do this. It was the first time I was going to be back in my home church. I had just graduated college, and I had taken a life-altering trip to Germany, and I had a message that was really important to me to impart to my fellow young adults. And so as my team and I were planning this worship, they asked, how can we help you? Impart this message that's so important to you. And I said, no, thank you. That's so kind of you to offer, but I'm okay. I have a very clear vision for, what I want to say and do. And so we put together all the moving pieces, but I was still working on my sermon up until the very last minute. And as time got closer, and we were trying to busy people to keep them occupied, my friends came to me and asked again, what can we do? How can we help you? And I said again in my prideful youth, no, I'm almost done. I got this. Thank you, but I'm okay. I don't need help. And so I finally finished everything that I was doing. We were ready to do the sermon. People sang their songs and they did their readings, and I went to stand up to the podium and deliver this message that I was so excited, only to realize in shuffling my papers that not all of them were printed. And so I stood there, frozen, and my friend Ben, bless his heart, came up to me, put his hand on my shoulder, and said again, how can I help you? And I told him what had happened. Not all the pages went to be printed. And without skipping a beat, he runs out of the sanctuary and goes to the minister's office to print the rest of the pages. And this probably took 5 minutes, but it was the longest, most uncomfy 5 minutes. And my other friend, Kaz, in this time, got up and sat at the piano and started playing music. And everybody started singing along to whatever kitschy pop song that she decided to play. And they sang, and they laughed, and they smiled. And we were all together, happy, sharing this moment. And isn't that why we come to church? Not only to give in service to others, but to also allow others to come to our aid. Perhaps even to be humbled a little bit, but to practice vulnerability in the safety and care of a community that loves us. Now I invite you to greet your neighbor and share with them maybe a time that you reluctantly accepted and received help.
friends, now it's time for a story. And you know me, some of you know me. I need a little help. So this story today comes to us from the Taoist tradition, and I need two helpers. I need someone, first of all, who's feeling strong and tall and firm in their convictions. Who is it? Here we go. Thanks, Brownlee. And I need a second person who's feeling flexible, who's feeling bendy and soft and yielding. Who is it? It's Pablo. Thank you. Way to be flexible in your role. And the story goes like this. You're right here. Once upon a time, in a forest of pine trees, there was a culture among the pine trees to stand as straight as they could. Here's our noble pine. To be as strong as they could be, to grow as tall as they could. The pine trees told one another and told their young as they grew up, stand tall, be straight and strong and proud, and do not bend. And so that is what the pine trees did. They all grew in this way. And on the edge of the pine forest, alongside of a stream, exactly, there was a weeping willow tree. It's like he knew it was coming. And now, there was no culture among the willows of standing tall and strong and firm and rigid. In fact, this willow loved to sway in the breeze, to bow and bend and move in every direction with their softness flowing like water, like the water that they loved to grow alongside. And every now and then, a pine tree on the edge of the forest, who was friends with the willow, would say, "Willow tree, you had better be strong and tall. You're not..." Exactly. "You'll not get far in this forest without strength and sturdiness. That's what this forest has been built on for generations." But the willow tree, oh, they didn't listen. They just swayed in the breeze. They didn't mind what the pine trees said about them. And one winter, a storm was coming. A snowstorm, a big blizzard like the forest had not seen in generations. And the pine trees all whispered to each other, "Stand strong, do not yield. The snow will fall on us, and we will be strong and tall, and we will see it through the storm." They whispered all through the forest, and they told the willow tree at the edge, "Stand strong, willow tree, a storm is coming." But the willow, they didn't listen. They just swayed their branches in the breeze. Exactly. And the storm came, and the snow started to fall, and it fell on the branches of the pine trees. And it was heavy. And it fell more and more and more snow, and it was heavy, and they stood as strong as they could. They held on to that strength. They stood as rigidly and as tall and as straight and strong as they possibly could as snow fell down and down and down on their branches. Meanwhile, the willow at the edge of the stream, snow fell on their branches, the branches bent down to the stream, and the snow slipped off, and the willow sprang back up. And then the snow fell, the branches dipped down to the stream, the snow slipped off, and the branches dipped back up. And in the pine forest, all of the branches of all of the trees grew heavier and heavier and heavier until the tallest pine with the strongest branches fell and toppled to the ground under the weight of all that snow. Way to commit, Brownlee. And the willow at the end of the storm just continued her soft dance in the wind. And this is the end of our story. Thank you so much for helping.
Please join me now in a moment of shared silence. Ground in our bodies. find our breath. Our meditation this morning is from Reverend Gretchen Haley. Give up the fight for some other moment, some other life than here and now. Give up the longing for some other world, the wishing for other choices to make, other songs to sing, other bodies, other ages, other countries, other stakes. Purge the past, forgive the future, for each come too soon. Surrender only to this life, this day, this hour, not because it does not constantly break your heart, but because it also beckons with beauty, startles with delight, if only we keep waking up. This is the gift we have been given. These body clothes, this heartbreak, this pulse, this breath, this light, these friends, this hope. Here, we remember ourselves, all, a part of it all. And now we'll take part in our ritual of community care. When you feel ready, and if you have a concern, a gratitude, come up and light a candle. Bring what is in our hearts and lay it on the altar of community and spirit. Honoring the complexities of life, bring to mind whatever is alive within you. Online, you're invited to share in the chat, and here in the sanctuary, you are invited forward to light a candle. If you need help to have a candle lit for you, please raise your hand and someone will bring it to you. All that we hold in our hearts for ourselves, for one another, and for the world is held in this community and by a love that will not let us go. Amen.
meditation today, we'll be singing Filled with Loving Kindness. I invite you to listen the first time. I'll sing it for everyone, and then we'll join in singing. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. All together, and may I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. Now may you be filled. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. Now may we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole. One more time, may we be whole. May we be whole.
Everything our church does for ourselves and others is made possible by what we bring to it. Each week we practice shared generosity to support the work and witness of Unitarian Universalism in Rochester, and half of our Sunday offering goes to a partner organization working to create a more just and loving world. Today, we share our plate with Planned Parenthood and their program Control for Community Health. Planned Parenthood offers a range of health services, including reproductive health, cancer screenings, and educational programs aimed at promoting wellness and informed health choices. Their mission focuses on providing accessible and affordable care to communities, emphasizing the importance of preventative health measures and support for individuals making informed decisions about their health and futures. In the spirit of abundance and generosity, our offering may now be received with gratitude. I use the internet.
Good morning. You have by now figured out I am not the Reverend Sherry Halliday Kwan. Everything you've been told this morning would be was a lie. But we're making do. Let's try and tell some truths now. So my kids do Taekwondo, which is a Korean martial art in the same family of martial arts as karate and kung fu, aikido, judo, and actually tai chi. And last year, I went with my older child to a Taekwondo tournament, his first Taekwondo tournament, and I was able to watch him spar against opponents in a non-practice setting for the first time ever. He said I could tell you this story, and I quote, because I won it. And he did. He won a first-place medal in his sparring category for his size and rank. But the way that he won, I found to be so surprising. This is a kid who I have never seen act out in aggression toward another person, right? He wasn't even a toddler who did normal toddlers toy snatching and biting and hair pulling. He's got a lot of energy and not the slightest ounce of aggression in him. And the type of martial art that he does, Taekwondo, includes staying in a ring and sparring, fighting with an opponent for a set amount of time and earning points to see who wins, right? I've never done a martial art or any type of sports things. And I thought that what I would see was pretty aggressive. And I had my doubts about how this perennially non-aggressive kid would do. But I was being my best mom self. I was saying, it's all about learning and having fun, and I'll be so proud of you if you do your best no matter what, all the classic momisms. But then I went and I watched my kid absolutely destroy his opponents by being whatever the opposite of aggressive is, soft, I guess, relaxed, yielding. Rather than brace against his opponent's hits and kicks, he moved with them, refusing to absorb any of their energy. A punch came for his shoulder, and he just turned his shoulder with the force, like seaweed meeting a wave. A kick came towards his head, and his head bowed with it, not ducking out of the way, but carrying the force of the kick so that his opponent fell over. That's a point deduction, falling over, I found out as it happened, because I'm about as bad at being a sports mom as I am at being a sports participant. So my kid just danced like this, softly moving along with, not against, all the blows of his opponents until they fell over or tired themselves out, hardly striking any of his own blows in return. It looked nothing like the fight match I was expecting. And yet there he was at the end of it, unharmed and being handed a little gold medal. And all my little Taoist had to say about his style of sparring was, they tell you to relax into the hit, and it really does work. And we've already covered me not being a great sports mom, so my first thought after parental pride was, this'll preach, I think. So of course, I did a deep dive into the theory and history of Taekwondo technique, and it turns out that one of its core principles is called, in English, relax strike, where high-level practitioners are taught to relax all of their muscles fully between each strike that they make, for the purpose of conserving energy and shifting their center of gravity slightly to make themselves harder to knock over. And using those relaxed muscles to move with an opponent's strike is taught to negate the impact of those strikes. And at this point, you all are like, did I accidentally sign up for a lecture on martial arts? And how do I get out of this? Know that this is a religious strategy. It's likely that this tactic of yielding in order to win comes to Taekwondo through a long line of philosophical inheritance across the Yellow Sea and inland to the Henan province of China and the beginnings of Taoism. Allow me to read you this excerpt on the principle of Wu Wei, or very roughly translated, non-doing, from a commentary on the Tao Te Ching by Alan Watts. He writes this: "Thus, Wu Wei, as not forcing, is what we mean by going with the grain, rolling with the punch, swimming with the current, trimming sails to the wind, taking the tide at its flood, and stooping to conquer. It is perhaps best exemplified in the martial arts, where an opponent is defeated by the force of his own attack. The martial arts reach such a height of skill that I have seen an attacker thrown to the floor without even being touched. The principle is illustrated by the parable of the pine and the willow in the heavy snow, which we told this morning. The pine branch, being rigid, cracks under the weight, but the willow branch yields to the weight and the snow drops off. Note, however, the willow is not limp, but springy. Wu Wei is thus the lifestyle of one who follows the Tao and must be understood primarily as a form of intelligence. That is, of knowing the principles, structures, and trends of human and natural affairs so well that one uses the least amount of energy in dealing with them. The intelligence is, as we have seen, not simply intellectual. It is also the unconscious intelligence of the whole organism, and in particular, the innate wisdom of the nervous system. Lao Tzu wrote in the Tao Te Ching about this principle of yielding, of staying soft, as rooted to that universal oneness of everything. And he said that our connection to that oneness, to that wholeness that it is available to those who notice it, is lost when we oppose in strength rather as if we are separate, rather than yielding in love. It's lost when we oppose in strength rather than yielding in love. Paddling without an awareness of the energy of currents is a struggle, but floating with the currents in connection to our surroundings is peace. Taoism makes its way into our own religious inheritance through France and then across the Atlantic to New England by way of the transcendentalists of the early 19th century, namely Unitarian-affiliated Henry David Thoreau. He was a member of a Unitarian church, although it is reported he rarely attended services. We know that he owned French commentaries on Taoism, even though an English translation of the Tao Te Ching didn't exist until a few decades after his time. So noticing the themes of his work, I think we can pretty safely assume Thoreau read those commentaries we know he had in his library. In fact, they seem to have been fairly influential on his thought around civil disobedience. The principle of Wu Wei shows up in his thought around ethics of disobedience without violence, where the justice-seeking person is like seaweed, swaying in the river as it flows past. They refuse to be dragged along in the current, planted firmly, even while yielding. If they stayed rigid, forceful against the nature of the water, they would break. But by bending, by giving into the energy of the water like seaweed, they not only survive, but they stay rooted in place. We see this principle of yielding to win show up in our modern justice movements inherited by way of Thoreau to Martin Luther King Jr. King wrote about reading Thoreau's Civil Disobedience in undergraduate school, saying, "I became convinced that non-cooperation with evil is as much a moral obligation as is cooperation with good. No other person has been more eloquent and passionate in getting this idea across than Henry David Thoreau. As a result of his writings and personal witness, we are the heirs of a legacy of creative protest." Now, by the time he made it through seminary, Dr. King had the conviction of this Taoist principle as understood by Thoreau, and he had the faith in the possibility of a world described in Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. And in case it's been a minute, let's hear a little bit of that, yeah? It begins like this, the Sermon on the Mount. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, who will be called the children of God. And blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven." And it actually goes on for the rest of the chapter and also the next two. You can find us in Matthew, chapters 5, 6, and 7, if you want to pull out your Bible and follow along. I'm just kidding. We are not that kind of church. I don't expect you to come here with a Bible. We're in Matthew's chapters 5, 6, and 7 if you want to Google this when you get home. And in the next few chapters, Jesus preaches on the intentions in our hearts being as important as the actions we take. He preaches on adultery. He rejects the eye for an eye code of Hammurabi, suggests we turn the other cheek, give to the needy, but don't do it ostentatiously. It's like all the greatest hits. So Dr. King had these chapters from his upbringing in the social gospel movement and the world we dream of as described by these chapters, the kingdom of heaven on earth, along with the clear understanding that our social structures of oppression and domination mean that this is very much not the world we have. And he has this inkling since young adulthood that Thoreau was onto something with this civil disobedience stuff. But Thoreau's third-hand translation is not quite cutting it. He sees the dream, he sees the potential, but he can't quite make out the path to get there. He has the ethic of love, but not the methodology. Enter Bayard Rustin. Do we know Bayard Rustin? Oh yeah, says Gregory from the front row. If you're not familiar, Bayard Rustin was a gay civil rights leader whose queerness, specifically his arrests for it in the public record, kept him behind the scenes of the movement, which is maybe why you know his work but not his name. In 1955 Alabama, no one was making him the poster boy. He was nevertheless extremely influential to the direction of this movement. He had gone to India in 1948 to train in Gandhian resistance methods. And when he went to aid the movement in Birmingham in the 50s, he brought his understandings of Gandhian techniques to Dr. King, of these techniques that Gandhi had drawn from Hinduism and from South African activism. He brought those techniques to Dr. King and to the rest of the movement in Birmingham. And suddenly, Dr. King's theology had a methodology that could be applied in the real world. It suddenly felt possible to hold whole societal structures, not just individual churchgoers, to the ethics of the Sermon on the Mount. Now here's where we drop the question of the Taoist inheritance. Hinduism, from which Gandhi derived most of his methods, is older than Taoism, and historians can't trace a lineage of thought from one to the other in either direction, but as Gandhi said to folks noticing the similarities between the two people can drink from the same pond, even if they both discovered it independently. Very rough translation. King and the whole movement, at Rustin's urging, adopted the Gandhian method of nonviolent resistance. The strategy was to resist injustice, not by force or by inflexible power, but by activists placing themselves in the line of oppression, right? By activists placing themselves in between oppressors' inflexible power and those who are being oppressed, bending with each blow. Simply sitting on buses or at lunch counters, marching peacefully in the streets, consumer inaction, non-doing, in the form of boycott, resisting authoritarian power for this movement and for so many following in its wake, did not have to mean seizing authoritarian power on their own terms. It meant waking up to practice a radically different kind of power. Dr. King's goal was not to see Bull Connor languish in a jail cell, but to realize their oneness, to see his heart redeemed by love. It is the power of force overtaken by power of a radically different kind. It is a strategy that wins by yielding, by giving up the struggle for hard and inflexible power, by giving up the oppressor's lie that we exist alone and outside of each other. It compels, in its very passivity, the wielders of oppressive power and their bystanders to recognize themselves as interrelated with those they oppress, as part of one river flowing. Nonviolent resistance works when resistors put themselves in the path of power, stay soft, and importantly, are observed. It is crucial that this yielding to win is public. It mattered that Bloody Sunday in Selma was televised, and that it was, at that time, the most violent thing Americans had ever seen on a screen. That was the win. The winning of so many hearts to the movement because they observed and were moved. That's the stumble and fall of the opponent on the mat, tumbling under the force of their own unresisted blow. This is a strategy that requires the softness of bystanders, requires breakable hearts. The breakable hearts of observers who hold the power of the majority and will be moved. And let me say this to my fellow white folks out there. As white anti-racists or as inheritors of white institutions, there is another spiritual component to this principle of yielding for us. It needs to include the inner work of cultivating a softness of self, a malleability of spirit that allows us to be receptive to the undoing of what racism has created in us. It allows us to be reshaped by justice. Rigidity, black and white thinking, is a pillar of white supremacy. It's an ideology that raises us to be like the pine tree, refusing to bend. And we need to let that go to access the wisdom of the willow, of the multiplicity of life, the softness that allows for change within ourselves and within the institutions that we steward. The waters of white supremacy that we have been grown in would have us hold certainty as one of our greatest values, would have us defend what we're sure we know and are right about against all else. Those rushing waters have taught us that power is a finite resource that we hoard or lose, have taught us to hold firm against anything that challenges what we're sure we know and what little power we think we've earned. Softness is the antidote to that hard certainty. To be part of the movement of liberation, we need to cultivate the receptivity to correction and trust that bending with the flow of change will not destroy us. We have been raised in the sea of racism, all of us, to believe that discomfort is tantamount to danger. That if we shift and sway uncomfortably, if we let our hearts soften to another's pain, we have lost. But friends, it is the only way to win. Yielding our hearts to the larger love that holds us all, that hurts us to our core when we see another in distress. Our seeing and being moved is a required tactic for this work. We cannot look away from the genocide in Palestine, from the famine in Sudan, from the ongoing oppression of our Black and brown siblings here in Rochester, right here in our denomination. The work is to see the tide of injustice sweep across the bodies of our siblings, our world, and allow our hearts to be redeemed by their own breaking. May we be so moved, and amen.
As we get ready for our connections, I invite you to rise in body or spirit one more time as we join in singing When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, when we see our faces in each other's eyes. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell a story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving cry, and we hear our voices in each other's words. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, we will share the silence of sacred space, and let God all our answers within, and we feel the power of each other's life. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
When our worship ends, it doesn't mean that church is over. And there are some ways to connect with one another this morning after we leave this room. I want to share with you a few of them. There is a climate crisis grief cafe in the Susan B. Anthony Lounge. If you go through these doors at the back and turn right, you will find it. There's multi-gen art, decorating eclipse glasses envelopes in the Williams Gallery. Head straight back and past the brick wall. Bell Choir in Gilbert Hall upstairs. Reproductive Justice Ministry, room 110, which is out these side doors and across the hallway. And Parenting Trans Kids, Youth, and Young Adults in the chapel, which I think is also upstairs. And if you're not sure or you forgot where to find these places, you'll find a very friendly woman named Shannon out in the lobby, and she will give you directions. And now let's extinguish our chalice. Will you say the chalice extinguishing words with me while Jenna extinguishes our flame? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Let us close with these words from the Tao Te Ching. Nothing in the world is as soft and yielding as water. Yet for dissolving the hard and inflexible, nothing can surpass it. The soft overcomes the hard, the gentle overcomes the rigid.